The masterpiece children. Prologue. The mural stretched 30 feet high across the brick facade of what was once a textile factory in downtown Portland. Swirls of cobalt blue and amber gold formed a tapestry of birds in flight, each one seemingly more liberated than the last as they escaped the confines of Earth toward a boundless sky. At the bottom, barely noticeable unless you knew where to look, was a small signature. Lena V. Ava Chen stood before it, clutching a worn photograph in one hand and a folder of documents in the other. The photograph showed a newborn, herself, wrapped in a firefighter's jacket. The folder contained her entire life's investigation. Birth certificate with mother's name hastily scribbled, newspaper articles about the internationally renowned muralist Lena Vega, and a map dotted with red pins marking fire stations across the world. "This is where it started," she whispered, her eyes fixed on the signature. Right across from Fire Station 12. Behind her, a small gathering of people began to form. 7 individuals, ranging in age from 19 to 37, each carrying their own folders, their own photographs. Each left at different fire stations. Each with the same mother's name on their birth certificates. And now, working on a restoration of her first major public work, Lena Vega herself was due to arrive any minute. Part 1. The Mother's Journey. Lena and Marco, 1988, Brooklyn. At 22, Lena Vega was a hurricane of ambition contained in a 5'4" frame. Her dark hair was often streaked with paint, her clothes perpetually splattered with evidence of her passion. She lived in a closet-sized apartment in Brooklyn, surviving on ramen and coffee, turning every available surface into canvas. Marco Rossi came into her life like a thunderclap, an Italian exchange student studying architecture, with hands that could build worlds and eyes that seemed to see through her carefully constructed walls. Their romance was explosive, fueled by shared creative fervor and youth's heady optimism. "We will make beautiful things together," Marco had promised, his accent thickening with emotion as they lay tangled in sheets, sketching designs on each other's skin with fingertips. When the positive pregnancy test appeared, Lena felt her world collapse. She didn't tell Marco. Instead, she watched him pack for his return to Milan, kissed him goodbye, and promised to visit soon. She never did. 3 months after giving birth to a baby boy she could barely look at without panic rising in her throat, Lena wrapped him in a blanket, placed him in a basket with his birth certificate, and left him at Brooklyn Fire Station 55 at 3 a.m. She was on a plane to Mexico City the next day, where her first major mural commission awaited. As the aircraft lifted off, she pressed her forehead against the window and wept, not for her child, but for the overwhelming relief she felt at being unbound again. Lena and Jabari, 1992, Paris. Paris embraced Lena's talent. Her murals began appearing throughout Montmartre, attracting attention from art critics and collectors. At a gallery opening featuring her work, she met Jabari, a Senegalese jazz musician whose improvisation on saxophone matched her own free-flowing approach to art. "Your paintings sound like music," he told her, his voice as smooth as his playing. Their affair lasted through a Parisian summer and a fall, Lena painting to the soundtrack of Jabari's saxophone in their shared apartment overlooking Sacré-Cœur. When she discovered she was pregnant again, history repeated itself. She disappeared from Jabari's life without explanation, moving to a small apartment across the city. After giving birth to a daughter, Lena waited until she recovered enough to travel, then left the baby at Fire Station 3 in Paris's 18th arrondissement. Within a week, she had accepted a commission in Tokyo. Lena and each subsequent father. The pattern continued over the years. Miguel, a Chilean poet she met during an artist residency in Buenos Aires, 1995. David, an American tech entrepreneur who funded an arts initiative in San Francisco, 1998. Hiroshi, a renowned Japanese photographer who collaborated with her on a project in Kyoto, 2001. Antoine, a French diplomat stationed in Cape Town, 2004. Wei, a Chinese curator she met at her exhibition in Shanghai, 2006. With each man, the story followed the same tragic arc. Passionate connection, creative collaboration, unplanned pregnancy, and Lena's eventual disappearance. Each child abandoned at a different fire station across the globe. Each father left wondering what had become of the brilliant, mysterious artist who had vanished from their lives. None of them knew about the children. None of them understood why Lena had suddenly cut all contact. And Lena herself pushed the memories down deep, focusing only on her next creation, her next journey, her next escape. Part 2. The Children's Stories. Antonio Rossi, born 1988, the architect. Antonio grew up with the Petrelli family, experienced firefighters who had discovered him and eventually adopted him. His adoptive parents never hid his origins, telling him the story of how he was found as soon as he was old enough to understand. "Your birth mother must have wanted you to be safe, Mrs. Petrelli would say. She chose firefighters because she knew he would protect you." Antonio showed remarkable spatial awareness from an early age, building elaborate structures with blocks that defied the laws of physics. By high school, he was designing renovation plans for his parents' home. He graduated from Columbia with a degree in architecture, his talent surpassing even that of the father he never knew. When Antonio was 28, he stumbled across an article about Lena Vega's upcoming exhibition in New York. The photograph accompanying the piece showed a mural with structural elements that mirrored his own design philosophy so closely that it sent chills down his spine. Something compelled him to research her, discovering that she had been in Brooklyn when he was born. With trembling hands, he compared his birth certificate to her biography. The dates matched. It was the first thread that would eventually lead him to his siblings. Amara Diop, born 1992, the musician. Amara was adopted by a French couple who worked as administrators at a hospital in Paris. Her childhood was filled with music, her adoptive father played piano, and their home was always alive with the sounds of French chansons and African rhythms. Amara's talent eclipsed everyone's expectations. By age 6, she could recreate any melody after hearing it once. By 12, she was composing her own jazz pieces that displayed a complexity professionals envied. Her improvisational skills were otherworldly, as if she were channeling music from some unseen dimension. "It must be in your blood," her adoptive father once remarked after watching her perform. Those words haunted Amara as she grew older. At 23, fresh from conservatory and building a name in Paris's jazz scene, she launched a search for her origins. The only clue: a birth certificate with Lena Vega's name and the name of Fire Station 3. Each subsequent child. Isabella Navarro, born 1995, the poet. Raised in Argentina by the family of a firefighter, developed a gift for poetry that surpassed her unknown father's, publishing her first collection at 19. Leo Wright, born 1998, the entrepreneur. Adopted by a middle-class American family in San Francisco, showed business acumen from childhood, developing a successful art-sharing platform by 22. Hana Tanaka, born 2001, the photographer. Grew up in a traditional Japanese family that struggled to understand her intense visual perception and eventual groundbreaking photography that blended digital innovation with classical techniques. Nadia Mbeki, born 2004, the diplomat. Raised by a South African family, displayed remarkable gift for languages and conflict resolution, becoming the youngest UN translator at 19. Jin Zhang, born 2006, the curator. Adopted by an academic Chinese family that relocated to Australia, demonstrated an uncanny ability to conceptualize spaces and connections between artworks, curating his first exhibition at 17. Each child grew up with the knowledge they were abandoned at a fire station. Each developed talents that eerily echoed their biological parents' gifts but took them in new directions. And each, in their own way, began searching for answers as they reached adulthood. Part 3. The connections. Antonio was the first to make the connection. His research into Lena Vega led him to create a website called firestationbabies.com, initially just to find information about himself. To his shock, Amara Diop contacted him within months. "I believe we share the same mother," her email began. Their first video call was a revelation, the similarities in their features unmistakable despite their different fathers. Antonio's strong jaw and analytical eyes contrasted with Amara's more delicate features and expressive gaze, but both had Lena's high cheekbones and the same distinctive way of tilting their head when considering a complex idea. Over the next few years, the others found the site. Isabella discovered it while researching artistic inspiration for her second poetry collection, recognizing her own abandonment story reflected in others' accounts. Leo found it when his art platform algorithm ironically suggested Antonio's architectural work as content he might find interesting. Hannah connected after photographing a Lena Vega mural in Tokyo and noticing the signature matched the one on her own birth certificate. Nadia located the site during research for a diplomatic mission involving international adoption policies. Jin found it last, his curatorial research into emerging architectural photographers leading him to Antonio's work and subsequently the website. Their virtual meetings became regular occurrences, 7 individuals across different continents, piecing together their shared history, marveling at the genetic talents they all possessed, and gradually forming a bond that transcended their unusual circumstances. When news broke that Lena Vega would be restoring her first major public mural in Portland, the one created shortly after abandoning Antonio, they made a pact to meet there in person. Not just to meet each other, but to finally confront the woman who had created them and left them behind. Part 4. The fathers. As the siblings connected, some chose to search for their fathers as well. Antonio located Marco Rossi, now a successful architect with his own firm in Milan and a family of his own. Their first meeting was awkward but emotional. "I always wondered why she disappeared," Marco said, studying Antonio's face with wonder. "Now I understand she was hiding you." "But why?" "You are," his voice broke. "You are extraordinary." Amara found Jabari performing at a jazz club in New Orleans. The saxophone player dropped his instrument mid-solo when she walked in, her resemblance to a younger Lena unmistakable. "I wrote a song called The Vanishing Muse after your mother left," he told Amara later that night. "I had no idea she left behind the greatest composition of her life." Each father reacted differently to the news of their child's existence. Miguel the poet wept openly, immediately incorporating Isabella into his life and family. David the entrepreneur was skeptical until a DNA test confirmed Leo's identity, then offered him partnership in his latest venture. Hiroshi the photographer was stoic but began a photography project documenting his and Hannah's parallel lives. Antoine the diplomat used his connections to help all the siblings navigate the international complexities of their searches. Wei the curator was initially angry at Lena's deception but quickly focused on building a relationship with the son he never knew he had. None of the men had known about Lena's pregnancies. All expressed varying degrees of regret, anger, and wonder. And all chose to welcome these newfound children into their lives, creating new branches of connection in the siblings' expanding family tree. Part 5. The Confrontation. Portland, April 15, 2025. Fire Station 12 stood much as it had 37 years earlier when Lena had completed her first commissioned mural across the street. Now, scaffolding covered portions of the faded artwork as restoration preparations began. The 7 siblings gathered in a nearby cafe, meeting in person for the first time. Despite having connected virtually for years, the physical reality of their shared features, mannerisms, and talents was overwhelming. "She's scheduled to begin work at noon," Antonio said, checking his watch. "Are we ready for this?" Hannah asked, her camera, always an extension of herself, resting unused on the table. "We've waited our whole lives," Amara replied. "Ready or not, we deserve answers." At precisely noon, a black SUV pulled up to the building. An older woman emerged, still striking at 60, her silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a practical bun, paint-splattered jeans and oversized shirt, her uniform as they had been in her youth. Lena Vega approached the mural, running her fingers gently over the faded paint, unaware of the 7 pairs of eyes watching her from across the street. As they crossed toward her, Antonio in the lead, Lena turned, some sixth sense alerting her to their presence. Her eyes widened as she took in the group, recognition and shock washing over her face in waves. "No," she whispered, taking an instinctive step back. "This isn't possible." "Hello, Mother," Antonio said, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions behind it. "We've been looking for you." Part 6. The Reckoning. They moved the conversation to a private room in the cafe. Lena sat with her back to the wall, looking like a cornered animal despite being surrounded by her own children. "I never thought I'd see any of you," she finally said after a long silence. "I never planned to." "Why?" The question came from Jin, the youngest. "Why did you leave us?" Quote. Lena's hands, those hands that had created beauty across the world, trembled as she wrapped them around her coffee cup. "I never wanted children," she began, her voice hoarse. "Never. Art was my child, my purpose. When I found out I was pregnant with you," she looked at Antonio, "I felt like I was being buried alive. Like everything I had worked for was being stolen from me." "So you just left us at fire stations?" Leo asked incredulously. "I made sure you would be safe," Lena countered, a flash of defensiveness breaking through her guilt. "I chose fire stations because they're always manned, always responsible. I knew you would be found quickly." "Why have so many of us?" Nadia pressed. "After the first time, why not take precautions?" Quote. Lena looked down. "I told myself each time would be different. That with each new partner, perhaps I would feel what I was supposed to feel. But it never came, that maternal instinct everyone talks about. Instead, there was only panic and resentment." "Resentment toward us? Before we were even born?" Isabella's poet's voice carried the weight of this betrayal. "Yes, Lena's admission was barely audible. I resented what your existence would take from me. My freedom. My art. My identity beyond being someone's mother. Tears streamed down her face now, decades of buried shame rising to the surface. I have created works on 6 continents. I have changed how people see public spaces. My art has inspired movements and revolutions, her voice strengthened. And none of that would have been possible if I had kept any of you. That's not true, Amara said quietly. Look at us. We all have careers. We all create. Some of us have children of our own now. I'm not like you, Lena replied. I'm broken in that way. I don't have what it takes to be someone's mother. I never did. The conversation continued for hours, painful questions met with painful truths. Lena spoke of her own childhood with emotionally absent parents, her fear of continuing cycles of damage, her absolute conviction that abandonment was kinder than raising children she could not love properly. I wasn't strong enough to give you up for proper adoption, she admitted. That would have required facing what I was doing. The fire stations let me pretend it was temporary, an emergency. Until I was far enough away to convince myself it had never happened at all. Epilogue. 1 year later, the Portland mural stood fully restored, but with a difference. Along its bottom edge ran a new element. A series of stylized flames, each one uniquely colored, representing fire stations 12, 55, 3, and all the others where Lena had left her children. Lena had not become a conventional mother overnight. There was too much damage, too many years lost. But she had begun the painful work of knowing her children as adults, of understanding the extraordinary people they had become without her. Some, like Antonio and Isabella, were more receptive to building a relationship. Others, like Leo and Hannah, maintained a careful distance. All continued the connections they had forged with each other and with their fathers, creating a complex, imperfect family web from the threads of abandonment. Lena's final major work, unveiled 2 years after the Portland confrontation, was titled 7 Flames. It depicted not fire stations but the creative spirits of her children, architecture, music, poetry, entrepreneurship, photography, diplomacy, and curation, each represented as a different colored flame rising from a common source. At the exhibition opening, Antonio stood beside his biological mother, studying the massive canvas. "Is this an apology?" he asked. "No," Lena answered truthfully. "There can be no adequate apology for what I did. This is recognition. You all burned brighter without me than you ever could have with me. That doesn't justify what I did, but perhaps it helps explain it." Behind them, the other siblings moved through the gallery with their fathers, the extended family they had created from absence. Imperfect. Unconventional. But finally, undeniably real. Amara approached, linking her arm through her brother's. "The critics are calling this her masterpiece," she said. "They're wrong," Antonio replied, watching their siblings across the room. "We are.